All right, last week, Israeli intelligence revealed that at least 13 employees of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Agency in Gaza, were involved with the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas. Now, we actually, back in November, talked about this because there was some evidence emerging then. Well, the UNRWA employees held roles in Hamas that included kidnapping hostages and taking part in a massacre where 97 people died. Now, in light of this discovery, two subcommittees of the House Foreign Affairs Committee held a joint hearing earlier today to examine the mission and the failures of UNRWA. Now, we've talked about this quite frequently on this program over the years, going back to when I took one of the first groups of congressmen over to the West Bank in Israel, and we got a briefing from on the Palestinian Authority by Palestinian Watch and how children were being indoctrinated. Now, that was 13 years ago. I'm just wondering if any of those children indoctrinated back then by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Agency that also had schools, if any of those kids grew up to be the terrorists who were a part of these October 7th attacks. Joining me now to discuss this, Congressman Scott Perry. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, House Oversight and Accountability Committee, and the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He represents the 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania, and he is a retired general from the United States Army, the National Guard in Pennsylvania. Congressman Perry, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Well, it's great to be with you, Tony. And of course, it seems like that hearing today to discuss the failures of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency would be a no-brainer. But some people were trying to walk a fine line, parse their words. Let's be clear, and I'll let everybody in the room know in case they were wondering, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, sponsored by the United States of America and many countries, is supporting terrorism. Unfortunately, unwittingly, your tax dollars are paying for the terrorism that you saw on October 7th. And people say, well, not directly. We're buying food, we're buying water, we're paying for electricity, we're paying for housing. But Tony, when they use the money that we give them to line a tunnel with cement and then electrify it, and that tunnel is used to attack Israel, then unfortunately your money's being used to commit terroristic acts. And we tried last fall in September it was literally my amendment to defund the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, as it's called. And we missed that by about 5 votes. Unfortunately, almost every single Democrat voted against that amendment. And there were a handful of Republicans that voted against that amendment. Otherwise, your tax dollars would no longer go there. And one of the things that is often said, and you'll see it in this hearing, is there's no alternative. Well, there's not going to be an alternative unless we stop paying this one, for sure. One of the witnesses said, well, we need to keep paying for this until we make an assessment. Tony, this is an assessment that's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And what you have is literally what would be a 2-state solution where Israel's here, Gaza's there, 2 different states, and one continues to attack the other. I'm just saying that the United States taxpayer should not be involved in paying for that.
And you've been sounding the alarm on this for years on Capitol Hill, so this is not new for you. But with the information that came forth by the Israeli intelligence agencies, the disclosures they made, were you surprised at all?
No, not surprised. What was surprising to me is that other people in Washington, D.C., and certainly on this committee, act as though they're surprised, because many of us have been ringing the alarm bells for years and years and years. And so that's what's surprising, not the fact that people that literally are working for this relief agency were also the perpetrators of mass atrocities. That's widely known, unfortunately.
So, Congressman Perry, you mentioned you have some colleagues saying, well, we got to keep funding them because who else is there to do this? Last time I checked, the USAID, the United States has an aid organization where we give away billions of dollars in foreign aid for these types of humanitarian projects. Why don't we do it ourselves instead of allowing the United Nations, who we should be looking at with suspicion anyway? Why should we give them the money?
Well, I'm going to take it a step further, but I do want to engage in that a little bit. There's the UN Commissioner, High Commissioner for refugees around the world. UNRWA just supports this portion of Gaza and the West Bank, essentially right next to Israel. That's all it does. And it gets billions upon billions of dollars. Meanwhile, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees gets a very small fraction of that money to deal with refugees around the globe. But I would say this: since 1948, the United States of America has been paying the lion's share of this. And at some point, you have to say to yourself, hold on a second here. Why does this continue to be the requirement and the responsibility of the United States of America? And while we know that there are people that live in Gaza that don't support Hamas, there are people that Hamas has executed for collaborating with the Jews and so on and so forth, and that there are people there that they should have food and water and shelter and so on and so forth. Why aren't the Arab countries in the region, why aren't they supplying that? The United States we've got our own border issues, our own national security issues to deal with, and we've got $34 trillion in debt. Will be $35 trillion by May. We simply don't have the money to keep paying for this, Tony. And while we all feel sorry for the horrific atrocities that have shocked our conscience on both sides of this equation, it is not the responsibility of the United States taxpayer to pay for this forever.
Fair enough. You're absolutely right. I mean, the Biden administration, the Trump administration cut them off because of their corrupt activities. The Biden administration not only turned the spigot back on, but it gave them more money, $730 million in last year. So you're absolutely right. We can't solve all the world's problems. My point is, at least don't give it to a corrupt organization.
Oh, for sure. And, the relief agency doesn't have a board. There's nobody held accountable. Literally, we give the money to them. They hand it to Hamas or Islamic Jihad or somebody like that. And then they use the money for whatever they want to.
It's foolishness.
It's ridiculous.
It is. Congressman, always great to see you. Appreciate your great work on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Tony. God bless you and your audience.
All right.